lastly, while technology and globalization were happening, what was not so obvious was the pension plan disappeared. Pensions, guaranteed income at retirement, have been around since the Roman army. In America, for American workers, they showed up in 1875 at the American Express Company. The banks and the railroads soon followed, as did organized labor. And by 1960, half of all Americans had a pension benefit, a guaranteed income in retirement. Today, in the private sector, those pension benefits have virtually disappeared, undermining the ability of many Americans to have a meaningful income in retirement and throwing them into the do-it-yourself world we live in. The world, as I've been describing, has changed enormously. Today, we're all on our own. And so there just wasn't an announcement of that. And so today, the mass of Americans are leading lives of financial desperation. As Dave Ramsey says, in America today, broke is normal. If you remember the statistics, 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 25% of their income each month is going to Visa or MasterCard. 2/3 of Americans can't come up with $1,000 for an emergency without borrowing the money. So the deal is, why this is important to you is this financial distress is costing you or your company a lot of money. How, you might say? Well, Gallup, the polling organization, tells us that only 1/3 of the workers in this country today are engaged in their jobs. Only 1/3 are interested in doing any more than the minimum necessary to not get fired. Price Waterhouse reports that more than half of all employees are stressed about their finances, and of these financially stressed employees, half of those are spending 3 or more hours each week at work dealing with their financial problems. The academics estimate the cost in productivity to your company is between $3,000 and $5,000 a year per financially stressed employee. So I'll let you do the math. Think about it. Many of you, I'm guessing, in the early years of your business, have woken up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning wondering how or where you were going to get the money to meet payroll this week. What if that never ends and living paycheck to paycheck just goes on week after week, month after month, year after year? Do you think that would impact your focus, your confidence, the work that you do? Well, it certainly impacted mine. That's reality for many of your employees today. Imagine, if you would, having $0 in emergency savings, constantly being in fear of your child breaking their arm, needing braces, excuse me, or your refrigerator going out. Certainly impacted my productivity. And then there's delayed retirement for people who can't afford to retire. So they don't. So your company's compensation costs are higher than they need to be. Your payroll tax and workers' comp expenses are higher than they need to be. And your health insurance costs are way, way higher than they need to be. In my experience, employees are overwhelmed by money, and they have enormous shame about that. They don't know what to do. They're frightened. They want and need help. So how do we fix this? Well, it starts with a cultural change. It starts with making employee financial health a priority for your organization, with clear messaging from management that employee financial well-being is important to your company. Then it's providing a platform to your employees with tools, resources, and accountability. And because of their overwhelm and shame, you're going to have to incentivize them a little bit. Gift card raffles, time off, not a lot of money, just what makes sense for your company. If you think about it, you or your company are spending a lot of money on your organization's retirement plan. You got employee deferrals, you got matching contributions, you got investment management fees, record-keeping fees, advisory fees, audit fees, not even mentioning the time your staff spends. And so whether that totals $80,000 or $8 million, I would assert it's a lot of money to your company. What do you want to get for those dollars being spent? If we look at a real-life client situation, there's a technology company in the southeastern U.S., 1,500 employees, a third of which were salaried, the remaining were hourly. The Human Resources Department was spending over 3 hours each week dealing with employee personal financial emergencies. They were highly frustrated with their inability to provide any meaningful solutions to the payroll advance request, garnishments, judgments, child support levies, etc. They hired us. We introduced a platform from a company named Questus. We had a vigorous rollout. We had ongoing employee engagement. We offered individual employee appointments with financial coaches. A year later, 68% of the employees have at least taken the initial assessment. Over 80 have aggregated all their accounts, and 130 action items have been completed. The client HR department has had their focus on employee financial issues reduced by 80%. They believe their hard dollar savings so far to be in excess of $50,000. So, again, I'm recommending make your 401k work harder for you. Ask your plan provider or your advisor to bring your employees behavioral and accountable tools that will allow them to know where they are on the road to their desired retirement, what changes they might need to make if needed to get there, establish and fund an emergency savings account, eliminate or make manageable their credit card debt, buy a home, fund their children's education. If they can't do this for you, then I would say it's time for a change. I would say it's time to relook at the why of your company's plan. It's time to relook at what you intend to get for the dollars you're spending. As I mentioned previously, employees are overwhelmed about money. They're filled with shame about that. But increasing focus on their behavior about money, giving them tools and motivation, can increase your productivity, lower your cost, and grow your profits. It's up to us. The government can't fix this. As business owners and executive leadership, we've pretty much always known this. Now, today, we have a new opportunity to grow our companies, to grow our revenues, and at the same time, increase the lives of people who, like us, show up every day investing their hopes and dreams for a better future. Thank you, and God bless America.
Many times we avoid the difficult conversation of our finances until we find ourselves swimming in water that is well over our heads. Mike has a realistic approach of talking about the very sensitive and difficult conversation of money. He goes to companies and helps them understand why it's in their benefit to make sure that their employees are financially stable so that their employees aren't finding themselves sinking or swimming. Invite Mike. He's a wonderful speaker and helps break down financials in a way that the average person can understand.
You know, we don't always want to hear the message. We really don't want to talk about finances until maybe it's too late. Invite Mike. He lets you talk about what's really important and get on a good point and get on good stepping stones so you can talk about what's really important, finances.
About 6 years ago, I got introduced to Tony and Mary Miller, who run this highly successful commercial janitorial company in Cincinnati called Gencoa. And of all the stories I've heard about Gencoa, the one that really captured my attention was that their turnover had exceeded 400%. They were losing business, it was costing them a lot of money. Their biggest customer, Procter & Gamble, had put them on probation. This was a big deal, and clearly they needed to do something. Long story made short, Tony was convinced it was the work itself that was causing so much turnover. This company cleaned office buildings. The work started late in the day and went late into the night. The pay was low, the work was boring. Mary wasn't so sure, and she decided to ask. She decided to actually survey the employee base and ask them why they thought so many of their coworkers were leaving. The results, to the surprise of everybody, particularly Tony, wasn't the late hours, nor was it the low pay that was causing so much turnover. It was transportation. When these workers finished cleaning in the buildings, they'd get out at midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning. Public transportation was really inadequate. They didn't really have a way to get home, so they quit. Gencoa bought a fleet of shuttle buses, and almost immediately turnover dropped 40%. What amazed me when I heard this story, and trust me when I tell you I was really stunned by it, was how the life circumstances of so many employees were invisible to company leadership. They would have probably been invisible to me, and tailoring a solution to their employees' life circumstances and not simply paying them more dropped turnover 40%, salvaged important customer relationships, and here's the cherry on top, more than paid for the cost of the buses. Now, why am I telling you this story? It's a nice story, right? Well, I know your lives are hectic. You've got competition, government regulation to deal with, the internal pressures of staffing and quality and capacity, and then the coronavirus gets dumped on top of all of that. Well, there's an underlying threat to your company that's unseen and unheard that will steal your company's sales, profits, customer satisfaction, and employee pride in doing a job well. That problem is the mass of your employees are leading lives of financial desperation. My goal here is that when you leave tonight, you're going to have a clear understanding of this problem and know a way to impact it, typically from money you're already spending. And in doing that, you're going to be able to restore meaning and purpose to your employees and create an environment where they can bring their best selves to work every day. My hope for you is that you're going to feel confident and empowered in your ability to tap more into the potential of your people, usher in gains in productivity, and create a sustainable competitive advantage for your company. Now, I'm a pension geek, which in today's world means I mostly advise 401k plans. And I didn't have a transportation problem like the janitorial company, but I was keenly aware that most of the employees who worked for my client companies weren't saving enough money to be able to retire successfully. Worse than that, I would hold these group meetings for which I would spend a lot of time preparing, and either very few employees would show up, or if their companies made them attend, I could tell most were bored and couldn't wait to get out of there. I got to where I really dreaded doing these meetings. And then I heard this Gencoa story, and I knew I had to look. I knew I had to find out what was it that I was missing that was making my communicating with employees and impacting their behavior so ineffective? What was my version of the Jancoa story that I just couldn't see? So taking a page from Mary Miller, I decided to ask the people participating in the plans. I had a meeting at one of my larger plans where they require the employees to attend. I had been there many times. The employees know me reasonably well. And I asked them on little slips of paper what their biggest concerns about money were. And just like here in the Jancoa transportation story, my eyes were once again just kind of slammed open. Almost to a person, they were not concerned about saving for retirement. What their priorities were, where their focus was having enough money to pay their bills each month, getting their children educated, buying a home for their family, and so on. And all at the same time, I am keenly aware that most are woefully short in their retirement savings. Chagrined, I think that's the right word, chagrined, doing some reflection, I realized that once upon a time my life had been exactly the same way. Too much debt, too little savings, too much stress, and maybe this is personal to me, but way too much shame about all of that. I knew employees hated my meetings. I knew I hated my meetings. Now I knew why. The knowing why was the good news, but how do I change? Or maybe more importantly, what do I change to?